Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am Maddie, I'm a professional dungeon master, I do actual plays, I'm a writer, I do a bunch of things, and I am here to tell you all about my favorite 7 types of categories of villains and how you can use them in your campaign. Villains are vital to a story. They're the make or break to see if the end of your campaign is going to be an epic finale or sort of fizzle out. I'm going to run through each of the 7 of these types, give you some examples from popular media, as well as tell you the pros and cons of using these villains, because none of them are perfect. In fact, the perfect villain is a combination of all of them, a little rogues gallery if you will. Type 1 is the mystery. This is the classic villain who you hear about but never see. The main reason they are so scary is because of the dread of the unknown. This is your classic Strahd von Zarovich from early Curse of Strahd. You hear about him from the villagers and constantly feel his presence, and there is a lot of suspense and build-up that makes the payoff when you actually meet him all the more interesting. I also like to call this the Jaws effect. You never really see the shark, but you always see the aftermath. As mentioned, this type is fantastic for building suspense, but since it is so impersonal, there is nothing for the players to really grab onto, to empathize with, so it can sometimes feel just too vast. They're better as a power in the background rather than a single villain. Think how Voldemort was never as interesting as Snape and Malfoy were as villains. Villain type 2 is the Vengeance. Unlike the mystery, you know exactly why this being is evil. You have seen their face and you know their reasons. For some reason, this world or whatever they are fighting against has cost them everything and they want revenge. They are rage incarnate, making them a terrifying, unpredictable force. This is your syndromes and your carries. Their motivations are crystal clear, even sympathetic. You maybe even can come up with some interesting dialogue between your players of whether they actually think this person is redeemable. But with the Vengeance, they aren't. They will never back down and will sooner kill the party than try and be reasoned with. This particular villain is incredible for dramatic story beats and monologues, but they can sometimes be a little bit too explosive. They're better for boss battles rather than a long-running game. Villain type 3 is the backstory. This one hits close to home. This is the one that is taken directly from a player's backstory. They could be an old friend, a sibling, a mentor gone bad. This is your Jinxes and your Lokis. These villains are super effective because the players probably wrote them themselves. They automatically care. It also can create some really interesting tension between your player characters, where the person who knows them might not want to kill them in the end. Will they manage to actually pull it off? The con to this one is that if you overuse this too much, it can become really central to one player character and you need to share the spotlight. So it's better as a single story arc or story beat rather than an overarching thing, because we need to share the room. Villain type 4 is the necessary evil. This is the kind of villain the players can't just kill. They might even need to work with them to stop a greater evil. Maybe they start out as antagonists but slowly become uneasy allies, or they're just a reality the players need to accept. These villains complicate morality and raise real-world questions about compromise, power, and survival. These villains are fantastic for some gritty political intrigue and to make your world feel real and morally grey. However, sometimes it can make the whole campaign seem really grey and a bit of a downer. If your players aren't looking for something heavy and would rather the classic good versus evil romp, you might want to steer away from this one. Villain type 5 is the Trickster. This one is chaotic neutral at its finest. You don't know if they're going to help you or harm you, and maybe they're willing to help for a price, but they are seconds away from betraying the party at any moment. They tease, they lie, they're often a funny, humorous addition. They're your Littlefingers, the Traveler, Hell and Distortion. Tricksters are great for tension and comic relief, but if you use them too many times, eventually the party's just going to stop talking to them because they don't trust them and they'll lose their usefulness completely. Villain type 6 is the Collateral Damage. This is the villain that was once neutral or even an ally to the party, but something the party did pushed them off the edge. Maybe they were left behind, or maybe a failure that the party did in the past cost them everything. They're your Harvey Dents, your Jason Todds, your Kylo Rens. These villains are impactful because they show that the party's actions have real-world consequences that will bite them in the butt. But tread carefully, if this isn't handled well, it can sometimes feel like you're just punishing your players. Make sure it still feels fair and compelling. And the final villain type, type 7, is the Betrayal. This one is the classic. It's the person who you thought was on the player's side the whole time until the twist. Whether it's a beloved NPC or even a PC, which I have done before, you have one character sheet that's your fake character who's gonna betray the party and eventually become an NPC, and your real character who's just waiting on the sidelines for the twist. This villain can create jaw-dropping moments. But be warned, players love to guess which is going to betray them, so oftentimes they will do anything to guess who it is. Pulling this off without tipping your hand is near impossible and needs a lot of finesse. So if they figure it out early or even kill the guy you're trying to get to be the betrayer, you can lose a lot of planning, so always have backups. So, as I mentioned earlier, I am an actual play DM, and I used all 7 of these villain types in my campaign, Dungeons Demigods. Dungeons Demigods is set on the island of Aiaya, which is a fictional version of the Percy Jackson world that we created set in Europe. And I'm just going to quickly break down how I used all 7 so you can see how they can form together in an overarching story and create a lot of layers. The mystery was Typhon, the god of vengeance and storms. He was locked in a volcano and was just waiting to be released, and the threat of that was all-consuming through 2 whole seasons. The vengeance was Echidna, Typhon's wife, who was working to free him. She wanted vengeance against the gods for forcing her to make these children who would then be killed endlessly for their entertainment. She would also find demigods who hated their parents and bring them under her wing as a sort of mother figure. The backstory was a villain who was the sister of a PC and a fellow demigod, one of the demigods who joined the bad guy's side. I also got a guest to come in and play that role, which really added to the emotional impact. The necessary evil was the gods themselves. The party and their characters didn't like the gods as they had abandoned them, especially Zeus, but they had to accept them as the better option compared to Typhon's chaos and destruction. The Trickster was Hermes. He was one of the PC's fathers, and he actively worked the whole campaign to try and derail their quest. Where they originally thought he was a villain for doing this, he was in fact just trying to stop them because he knew what was going to happen if they kept going and wanted to keep his children safe. The Collateral Damage was a demigod who was left behind when the rest of the party went on a quest. He was known to really hate his father, and the party never checked in on him, so eventually he joined the bad guy's side. This was a slow descent and kind of showed how if you don't keep track of everything, some things are going to happen, but at the same time, the party can never keep track of everything, so there's always going to be a little bit of collateral damage. And the Betrayal, that one was really good. And I don't want to give away any spoilers, so I guess you're just gonna have to watch it. So, those are my 7 types of villains that you can use in your campaign. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And also talk about in the comments below, do you have some different categories you want to include? Or some villains you've written yourself that could go in any one of these categories? Have a brainstorming session, I want to hear all about it. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.